Let me start with a simple idea. Welfare is not charity, it's not pity, and it's definitely not a free lunch. When we hear about public spending on healthcare, education, or nutrition, we often hear questions like, can we afford it? But I believe we should ask the opposite. Can we afford not to? Because if we zoom out, human capital isn't just a social good, it's a strategic and economic asset. In fact, I would argue that it's the infrastructure on which all business success depends. Think of any successful business. It needs people who are skilled, healthy, and mentally sharp. But what happens when children go hungry, or schools become dysfunctional, or healthcare collapses under pressure? We don't just lose social equity. We lose creativity, productivity, and market potential. In class, I remember we discussed about how the nutritional deficit in early years impairs long-term cognitive development. That's not just tragic, it's economically expensive because it creates a workforce that is underprepared for jobs of tomorrow. So when we cut spending on health or education, it's not fiscal discipline, it's short-termism, and businesses will eventually pay for it. But here's the catch. It's not about how much do we invest. It's about how we design the system. Targeted welfare schemes do sound efficient, but they often come with exclusion errors. The ones who need the most help end up getting left out because of lack of relevant connections or paperwork. Universal approaches, on the other hand, may sound costlier, but they come with less barriers and more dignity. And then there is the mode of delivery. Cash transfers can empower people, but only if the local markets actually function. If you hand someone money, but there is no clinic or ration shop nearby, what's the use of it? We treat public goods like primary healthcare or nutrition as optional, but they are not. They are non-rival, non-excludable, and very essential for a productive economy. The problem isn't new, but it keeps on repeating because our system is wired for short-term wins over long-term outcomes. As we discussed in class, most of the reforms, especially the economic ones, are chosen not for impact, but for how convertible they are into votes. A road is visible, a flyover is photogenic, but a well-fed child or a functioning Anganwadi, that is invisible to the political eye. Even if there is intent, we have a data problem. Our macro indicators like growth, inflation, or employment have become harder to interpret. If we don't even trust our instruments, how do we steer the ship? And that kind of uncertainty makes the political leaders and sometimes even the businesses risk-averse when it comes to investing in long-term welfare infrastructure. And then comes the part that we can't ignore: inequality. We may design systems with the best of intentions, but when social structures like caste, gender, or geography come into play, the outcomes are mostly distorted. We saw in class that neutral policies often reproduce inherited advantage. As we saw in the irrigation example, the water physically flowed to the dominant caste areas, even though the design was objective. The same thing applies on welfare schemes as well. When women don't have control over their bank accounts, a cash transfer is meaningless. A village may have a school, but if no one shows up to teach, what's the point of it? It's not just an ethical problem, it's an economic bottleneck, because we are leaving a vast section of our future workforce underprepared and underutilized. Now, someone might say, but isn't this the government's job? Sure, but businesses are already paying the cost through skill shortage, stagnant demand, and lack of economic dynamism. This is not about doing CSR for good optics, but this is about having skin in the game. Smart businesses need to look at human capital as not just an HR problem, but as a part of their strategic planning. Imagine if we treated a child's nutrition or a woman's access to healthcare with the same urgency as we treat the quarterly revenue numbers. Because ultimately, one determines the other. So no, welfare is not charity. It's infrastructure it's capital, and it's the most important form of investment that any sector, whether public or private, can make. Thank you so much.